we will do a deep dive into our platforms, Alex, Redbird, and Arrive Math Booster. The duration of this session is going to be 90 minutes. I just want to let you know it's not the normal 60-minute session that we have. We will have this duration of the session is going to be a bit longer than our previous webinar, so it's going to be 90 minutes. And I'm your host. My name is Sarah Shuja. I am the marketing manager at McGraw Hill, and I'll be here in the background if you need any support. You have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I can help you if you face any technical difficulties as well. One common, in these recent webinars, one of the common questions that come up is, I cannot see the presenter's screen. My screen is blank. Almost every time what has worked is please try to log off Zoom and try to log back in again. It will work. You will be able to see the presenter's screen. And just before I hand over, I do want to introduce a very special guest with us today, Jean Sims. Thank you for being here with us today. She is a personalized learning specialist at McGraw Hill. She's got a lot of experience. She's done sales and implementation support for K-12 teachers with Alex, Redbird, and Arrive Math. And she's helped a lot of educators to sort of leverage technology and enhance their math instruction. So we are very glad to have her with us today. Thank you for being here. And before sorry.
That's okay.
And before I just hand over to her, I just want to remind you a couple of housekeeping slides that never get old. I've already told you about the blank screen situation. So if you're suffering from a blank screen, make sure you're not using any high bandwidth apps like Netflix, YouTube during the webinar. And if you see a blank screen, get out of Zoom and try to log back in again. We are happy to take Q&A towards the end of the session, but feel free to put them in the Q&A box that's on your right-hand side. We'll also be sending you the recording of this session after the webinar, and certificates will also be provided once the webinar series is completed. So by next week, you should have an email with the recording of the webinar and also your certificate for the session. We do want to keep this as interactive as possible. We want to hear from you. We want to keep this as engaged. So use the chat box to interact with us. Use the Q&A box to ask any questions if you face any technical difficulties or any questions regarding the presenters, whatever that you're seeing on your screen. Please feel free to ask us, and we're happy to help you. And I think with that, I can stop sharing my screen at this point. I'll be here in the background if you guys need anything. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good day, everyone. We are going to jump right into Alex to get started. We're going to talk about Alex. We're going to talk about Arrive Math Booster, and we're going to talk about Redbird. Since the majority of you are using Alex, we will start there. And hopefully you're able to see my screen now that I am sharing it. Let you adjust. I will keep an eye on both the chat and the question and answer boxes if you want to throw anything in there, and I'll pause periodically to answer those questions. So anytime those questions come up, do feel free to put them in chat. All right, so we're starting out as the student inside the Alex account. We're going to take a look together at exactly what students will experience on their first day so that you can feel comfortable with that. We'll take a look at what you'll experience as an instructor. And then past that, we can look a little bit at how some folks have chosen to implement Alex in their classrooms. When students first start out in Alex, they will receive all of the information that they need right on the screen. Of course, it's helpful to frame their learning and help them understand what it is Alex is for. We'd want to share things similar to what Alex shares here in the introduction. Alex is a personalized way to learn at your own pace. Alex figures out the topics that you already know and then helps you take the right path to success through a cycle of both assessment and learning. It's important for students to understand that that assessment cycle determines the content that they see while they're working on Alex. So if they were to get a bunch of questions wrong on purpose, that's going to mean they have a lot more content to work on in ALEX. And if they were to maybe get some help that let them do better than they should have on that initial assessment, it's going to mean that students are going to have content that's too challenging for them in ALEX and will get frustrated. So biggest message to students as they get started is that it's really their own personalized way to learn. And it's important that that assessment reflects what they actually know about the ALEX content. Students will be able to see a little tour here with these orange outline boxes to go through the different features of their account. All they have to do to continue is click on the next buttons that appear in all of these pop-ups. Students will now complete the tools tutorial. ALEX is an open response environment avoiding multiple choice questions. So we want to be sure that students understand how to record their answers within the program. This will take students about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And the questions that are contained in the tools tutorial are going to depend which level of content students have been assigned in the ALEX platform, right? We wouldn't ask a student who's 8 years old to solve a system of linear equations, so we don't need to show them those tools. So they will be an age-appropriate review of the tools in the platform. For our demonstration today, I've chosen an algebra course, so the content you see here will align to what students would see if they were enrolled in an algebra course. And you can see that I'm just following the instructions on the screen here. If at any point I don't follow the instructions, ALEX will ask me to redo what I have done in order to correctly follow the instructions. ALEX will provide a calculator to students with the use of the little calculator button that you see here on the right side of my screen. That calculator is only going to be available to students when they are being asked a question that they should use a calculator to solve. So if we're testing if students know a multiplication algorithm, ALEX would not provide them the calculator at that time, because at that point, ALEX is trying to determine whether or not students actually know the algorithm, right? Not if they can appropriately hit buttons on the calculator. All right, once that 5 to 10 minutes is up and students have completed that tools tutorial, the next thing that ALEX has unlocked for them is their initial knowledge check. Everything we've talked about so far is automatic for students. You don't have to assign anything or pick anything. When students are in their class, they're automatically ready to go. This knowledge check is required before students can access any of their learning, right? This is the only way for ALEX to determine which content students are ready to learn next. This initial knowledge check will contain between 25 and 30 questions. It will take students between 30 and 60 minutes to complete. And if they don't complete it all in one login, when they come back to ALEX, they'll be taken back to the spot that they last left off. Some tips for students before they get started with a knowledge check: to stay focused and not get distracted, to have a paper and pencil available. I've seen some teachers who choose to just have students use a notepad scratch area within their computer, but I really do suggest that they are keeping track of their work the same way we would expect them to if they weren't using Alex, with paper and pencil while they're working through the program. If they get questions incorrect, it'll give them a chance to look through their work as they're reading through the explanation that goes along with the problem. And of course, we want students to take their time and try their best. Students have a few options available to them within the knowledge check. If students are stuck on how the tool works to answer any of the questions, there will be a question mark here on the right side of the screen that will provide students help with how to use the interface. So nothing about the computation for the problem, just assistance with the tools on the screen. Students have the option for each question to select I don't know. The first time that they hover over I don't know, Alex will remind them that selecting I don't know is going to impact their final result. So if there's a chance that they know the portion of the question, or they want to take an educated guess at the answer, they should go ahead and do that. If they really have no idea where to even get started with the question, it's perfectly okay if they use the I don't know button. I always like to let students know that there's probably going to be a time in this initial knowledge check that they'll have to use the I don't know button, and that's okay. Alex's goal is to figure out what they're ready to learn right now, not see that they already know everything. Now, each time students answer a question, they'll click the submit button here. And just as you see here in the red text, the solve and skip buttons I have are part of the demonstration feature that I'm using with Alex. Students won't be able to skip the knowledge check. Students won't be able to cheat and just use the solve button to get it correct. They will actually have to type in or solve the questions on the screen. All right, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to click that solve button to get my first question on the knowledge check correct. You can see that I got no feedback. I just know that Alex got my answer because it moved me on to question 2 here at the top of the screen. Students receive no feedback when they're working on the initial knowledge check. The content is used to inform their pathway. Students will be taken to different questions as they're getting questions right and wrong throughout their assessment. And the questions are entirely generated by an algorithm. So each student is going to get different questions from their peers. This is a good example of there being a few different tools on the screen and students having the option to see what all of those tools would do if they need some support on answering that question. And you'll see in this case, students have the choice of a couple different modalities to answer the question. They could start by drawing points, plotting points on the graph. They could also choose to plot a point by typing in numbers. Right, so I could have plotted that same point by using that plot point feature there. So Alex will allow students different ways to answer the questions. So 25 to 30 questions for students, but I am going to cheat again and use the skip button and pretend that I had a moderate knowledge of this course. Here, as a result, we are seeing the students' pie for the first time. The pie that students have access to is determined by the course product in Alex that you have assigned to your students. Teachers have the option to adjust the course product throughout the year as necessary. And the only topics assessed in that initial assessment are the topics contained within that course. Again, as I mentioned, I picked an Algebra 1 and preparation course for us today. So there were 615 topics in my pie assessed by that initial knowledge check. And I just cheated and got credit for 349 of them. When students log into their account subsequent times, this is what they will always see. they'll be able to click Start My Path, at which point Alex will have curated the topics that they are most likely to be successful with, again, without instructors having to take any steps to make assignments for students, all automatic. Some additional options have appeared for students in their account. They now, in addition to the calculator and Spanish buttons, have the option to watch a series of personal tutor videos that are related to the content on the screen. There'll be videos 2 to 3 minutes in length that will help students with example problems similar to what they're being asked to complete. Students also have access to a dictionary where any of the hyperlinked words here are defined, as well as examples and related words. Once a student clicks Start, they'll be able to show Alex that they know this content by getting a series of questions correct. Students will receive immediate feedback once they're working in their pathway on the correctness of their question. So you can see there, I just got credit for my first question. Alex's algorithm does a tremendous job of picking questions that really get at the corners of the math content that they're learning, not just the middle, right? We know that a student might be tempted to use an exponent of 7 in this case because they don't see an exponent with that first term. So Alex is going to make sure the students really understand those rules. Now, because I got 2 questions right in a row, I just earned double credit on this particular question. I'm going to get 1 more question right in a row. And you'll see that now I have full credit for this particular topic in just 3 questions. Now, if I was not experiencing success with this topic, I would be able to get 3 questions wrong in a row before Alex also moved me on to additional content. I will have 2 attempts with each question. So if I get a question wrong on the first try, I would always be able to review my work, see maybe where I made the misstep, and get credit for the question in my second attempt. If I do get it wrong on both of those attempts, Alex is going to show me an exact worked out solution for the problem that I just got wrong. Hopefully that's enough for me to reclaim and get credit for the subsequent question. But again, I can get up to 3 questions wrong in a row before Alex tells me to take a break and work on something else. This is going to be tracked for us as instructors as a topic the student attempted but has not successfully learned. And students will be able to go in and pick from anything else they're ready to learn. So if we think about it graphically, the topics that students have access to when they're working in their account are going to be the topics right here on the border between what's already colored in each pie slice and the part that is still grayed out. Right, so we're keeping them with a small spread, a small range of content based on what we know about their current knowledge state. Students have full access to their data at all times, and we have full access to all of our students' data. So starting in the student account, we can come to their main menu and click on the reports section to be able to see detailed reports about the student's progress. Now, this is just me today while we've been together, so my progress is small. You can see here under Pi Progress History, my knowledge check that got me credit for 57% of my Pi on my initial assessment. Now, students will continue to have knowledge checks come up for them automatically every 5 hours they spend in program and 20 topics that they learn. So both of those conditions have to be true. They have to have spent 5 hours and learned 20 topics. And that, of course, is to ensure retention through spaced practice. We want to make sure that topics that students learned months ago, students are still competent in. Now, in terms of what I've done today, we can see that I spent just about 23 minutes in program. And in that time, I was successful with one topic learned, and I attempted but was not successful with one additional topic. Typically, this topics learned is what we see instructors set for goals for students. On average, students learn somewhere around 5 to 8 topics per hour spent in program. So instead of giving students a time goal, we like to give students a topic goal to make sure that they're really making the best possible use of the time they have to spend in program. One of the ways that we would look to support students is with the topics that they have attempted but haven't learned. And we could do that on an individual level or on a group level in class. The student is able to click View Full Report here and come in and see exactly what they worked on each day, which would be a great way for them to get support from anyone without needing it to come from their instructor. If I select any of the days, I'm able to see the topic that I worked on. I'm able to hover, see the amount of time I spent on each question, and I'm even able to click on each of these circles to see exactly what the students saw when they saw the question. So in the case of the bar graph question that I was having trouble with, I could always bring my computer to someone after the fact and get support with what I was supposed to do with this question to get the answer correct. In addition to providing students feedback on the number of topics learned per week, another popular point of conversation between instructors and students is their learning behaviors in ALEKS. You were with me. You saw how I didn't read any of the explanations or try to check any of my answers when I was in this bar graph problem. In reviewing the students' work here, we can see, for example, that I spent 13 seconds on one of those explanation pages and 2 seconds on the next one. So it's a transparent opportunity to help students see how they could do better while they're working in ALEKS by watching those videos, using the explanations, all of the resources that are automatically available to them within their student account. Now you'll see there's a robust menu here available for students. Most of these items you won't end up utilizing in your classroom. Typically, all students are going to do is continue their path from their main page and then also go into that reporting section that you see there. You can send students messages. If you do that, they'll pop up right here in this little bell message center here for your students. I see a question in chat. Does ALEKS support creating plans based on map testing? No, map and ALEKS do not integrate with one another. You'll find that the results of the map testing are broad in terms of how specific the information gets about topic progress. Within ALEKS, there's hundreds of topics contained to each course, and the knowledge space theory behind ALEKS generates what students work on next. So the results of the map test would not allow ALEKS to be granular or specific enough to what students are going to learn. Now, that being said, you have the option in ALEKS to customize what students see. So if you wanted to prioritize certain areas of content over others, you could do that. And you also have the opportunity to generate assignments. So if there are specific subsets of content that you'd like to directly assign to students above and beyond their personalized pathway, you can do that as well. So certainly some ways for you to curate the content, but it's not a direct alignment between scores and the ALEKS account. Now, I'm going to click over to a teacher account so that we can see what you all would see as your students are working through ALEKS. But if anybody's had any questions come up for them so far about the student side of things, go ahead and throw them in the question and answer box or in the chat box as we continue on here. Now for an instructor, the page looks pretty similar to that reports page that we just saw for the student, but it contains different data, right? Now we're looking at the progress of our whole class at once. When I come into my Alex account and I'm reviewing my class, I'm looking for two different types of information. I'm looking for information about where I could help students in content, and I'm looking for information in how I could monitor overall statistics, right? Are students doing well? How quickly are they getting through topics? Are they making the most of their time? So let's take that statistics question first and look at a couple reports that will help us learn what our students have been up to. When I hover over reports, you'll see a variety of choices at the class level. The first report we're going to look at is the progress report. Progress report is going to tell us just that, general progress for our students. Great place to start when students first take that assessment at the beginning of the year, because this report is going to show us, let's make it a little bit bigger. This report is going to show us how long students spent on that knowledge check. So if I come here and see that a student spent 8 minutes, for example, on that assessment, we know that isn't long enough for them to answer questions correctly, and we could reassign it to them. We'll be able to see what percent of the course students got credit for on that initial assessment, so you could compare students to their peers throughout their class. And one note about the time, if a student didn't spend enough time on the assessment, you can reassign it to them. I would always have a conversation with the student first, however, because we want to make sure they take it seriously the next time. The Since Last Knowledge Check columns here at the end are going to start out blank when students first take their assessment. But once students spend a couple hours in program, Alex will be able to calculate that learning rate for students. Now remember, I mentioned on average, students learn between 5 and 8 topics per hour. In the beginning, we can expect that number to be maybe even a little higher than that. And then the longer students spend in a course, the slower their progress will be. Now I can sort any of these columns, which would allow me, for example, if I only had a couple minutes to talk to students, to pick the students who were working the slowest or having the most trouble in content to check in with. I don't have time, of course, to look at every student's progress every day, so these reports are a nice way to sort out who I might want to check in with. Now, in terms of how those numbers are calculated, what does what students are doing look like to get those numbers? The same report we just saw at the student level, where we could see every question that they answered, is available to us at the instructor level under time and topic. That's called the time and topic report. It's going to show us how much time students spent and how they were doing with the topics that they learned. At the start, we'll be able to see that data for each of our students. Each day they were working, how much time they spent, and then how many topics they were successful with out of how many they attempted. So here we would be looking for not necessarily 100%, but a majority, right? We want students to be successful with the majority of the questions, topics that they attempt. And then we also want to see that that number is aligning to our 5 to 8 topics per hour. So Jill here on this first day is a little bit short, right? She only got credit for about 50% of the topics she worked on. And she only got credit for 2 topics in 42 minutes. So it'd be really hard for her to get up to that 5 per hour. And I could also take her progress overall, right? To see if maybe that was just an off day. So I can quickly go through each day if I want to check in with individual students who struggled. This one just caught my eye. Here's a student who spent over an hour in program, was only successful with 1 of the 6 topics that they tried. Clicking on student names in this report brings us to the same spot we already saw in the student account, where we can go in and get exact details from that particular day. The other thing that teachers really like about this report is it gives them the freedom to go in after the fact and see what students were up to. We want to believe that all of our students are doing exactly what we expected them to do, but it's very nice to be able to have the visibility to go back after time and check. Please don't be overwhelmed. I'm not suggesting that you look at every student every day. Just want you to know that the information is available here for you when you do want to take that look. Now, if you are looking at individual student progress, you'll notice that this red tab up at the top now has this one student's name in it. The reporting options have changed now that I'm looking at the student level instead of the class level. And I have the option to pull a report that I think could be very useful if you're looking at individual students, and that's called the IEP report. So we didn't have this at the class level because it's a student level report only. But if I click here on the IEP report, you'll see that I can download it as a PDF. So it's great for anyone who doesn't have access to Alex and wants to see student progress. And it details everything we've talked about. So yes, all the progress monitoring spots are here of exactly what students have learned over time since they started, as well as the numbers of what they've recently learned. But it allows me to see what the student has struggled with. It allows me to see anything the student has forgotten. And it allows me to see everything that the student has been shown competency with. I love to scroll through this with students and show them how many topics they really can do in math if they are worried about struggling in math. All right, so that was a student level report because I'm here at the student tab. I'm going to click on the word class. It'll take me out of the student account and back to the class account. I see your request for a standards report in chat. I'm going to talk about standards a couple different ways. So just know that it's coming as a tag in one of the reports that I'm going to show here. At your class level dashboard, you actually have two pages of tiles. You have the first page that's shown here, and then there's a tiny little set of double arrows that lets you choose a second page of tiles. On the second page of tiles, you'll see a tile specific to standards progress that will just show you where students are sitting with whichever standards have been selected to be used in your class. I don't find that to be the most helpful standards view. It's a nice high-level view if you just want to check some boxes and get some numbers. But if you want to figure out exactly what students need help with, there's a better way to view the standards, which is what we're going to talk about next. So there's a standards progress. If you come to reports, there is, in fact, a standards report. Just does not help me make the best instructional decisions for what to do next for students. For those instructional decisions, I'm going to utilize these tiles that I see here with the different color headers. So you see my yellow, my magenta, and my red tile. What these are doing is pointing out the topics that are the highest concentration in my class currently. So ready to learn would mean that these topics would be available to students, not that they've had trouble with them yet. And Alex has gone ahead and pulled the highest percentages for me here. So 70% of my class is ready to learn this topic. If I click on the words anywhere in Alex, I'll be able to get sample problems that I could use with students, as well as worked out explanations that I could show them for them to check their answer. I'm not worried about these ready to learn students struggling with content because they haven't necessarily had a chance to try those questions yet. These next two tiles, though, attempted, not yet learned, and lost in recent assessment, are going to be how I can differentiate small groups for my instruction. This is letting me know that 12%, which is the highest concentration for any topic of the hundreds in this class, 12% of my students have struggled with this topic. So this time I want to know who the 12% are, and I want to provide them small group support with that content. So if I click on the 12%, Alex is going to load a new report that we haven't seen yet that's called the Alex Pie report. The reason I like going there through those tiles is because instead of scrolling up and down to look for something, Alex is taking me directly to the students who need help with this topic. So then I can pull those 4 students together and help them go through some example problems to make sure they can be successful with that topic. Now, I've got a line here on this report for everyone of the topics in the course, so 600 something in my particular case. I can sort this report a couple different ways. I can view it just in terms of the ALEX pie slices. If I have chosen to integrate any modules into the course, so in our case, we could talk about customizing the order that students see things based on pie slices. We could talk about customizing the order that students see things based on a curriculum you're using. So that, for example, instead of students working equally in all slices, they would have to complete fractions or equations or whatever you prioritize for them. That's going to allow you to see all the content sorted that way. And then here's the standards view that I mentioned that I find a lot more useful. Again, taking all the hundreds of topics that are contained in the pie and sorting them out for us in our strands for the specific standards that we're using. So here I can see each of the topics that's tied into each of the strands instead of just the strand overall. And I can see where all my students are at. I can see the students who have progressed through, who have credit for that particular topic. And then the rest of the students who have not yet progressed through. If there's a subset of students who are ready to learn that topic, I can see them. And then if there's a group of students who have struggled with that topic, I can see them. I can send out differentiated messages to the group, right? So I could come in here, click message my students. It will go as a blind carbon copy to all of them, and I'd be able to type a message, send them a video, tell them when I'm going to be going over that content, anything I want to. So ALEX has made the ability to differentiate pretty much instant and preparation free, right? I don't have to do a lot in advance to be able to get students messages or content that's specifically curated for them. So back to the standards question, I prefer the view of standards that would come from the pie report than the report that clearly states standards. I think it's a better way to see where our students could most benefit from our assistance. Now you'll see in your instructor account lots of other options available to you. I did mention when we were talking about the map test that you can create assignments above and beyond what students are working on in their pie to pick specific questions. So that's there for you. And you can also change a lot of the settings of your class under class administration. Class summary section will allow you to change the order that students see content, send out emails to parents around students' progress automatically, and a variety of other options to customize what students are seeing in the class. Another option that some teachers like to use is the quick tables. Quick tables is basic fact practice, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, that allows us to let students practice those basic facts. So you can turn those on and off for any course. All right, I'm going to take a pause here and see if folks have any questions about ALEX at all. While you're typing those in, I will point out that up here in your ALEX account where it says hello and your name, there's a help area, including a training and resources section. So this would be a great thing for you to know about, as this training and resources page contains handouts and videos for just about anything that you could want to do within the ALEX platform. So as you start to have questions, you can get support for that content here. So again, I just went right up here in the top right corner of my account where it says hello, and I clicked on training and resources to load that page. You can also, of course, access customer support through this same section. All right, we'll take a quick pause here. I will get us set up to be able to take a look at Arrive Math Booster and Redbird next. But if you have any final questions about ALEX, please go ahead and throw them in chat. And we'll continue on with the next program in just a couple minutes.
Thank you, Jen. If you have any questions, please let us know. Excellent. Thank you for all that lovely feedback. And we will be covering Arrive, I guess, next. Stay tuned, please. We are waiting for a few minutes and then we'll get started again. Thank you. And there you go.
Yes, we are coming right back. We need everybody to take a chance to scrub those Alex memories, write down their notes, and then clear up and start fresh with another program. All right, so based on the feedback that I saw on the poll, it looks like our second most used product is Arrive Math Booster. So I'm going to talk about Arrive Math Booster next, and then we'll move on to Redbird Math third. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Arrive Math Booster overall, since a lot of folks might not be familiar with it, and it might be something that you want to think about adding on to utilize with your students. So Arrive Math Booster's logo is this cute rocket that you see here on my screen. I am going to take us through a teacher account of Arrive Math Booster with examples as we talk about what Arrive Math Booster can do for your students. Now, Arrive Math Booster contains content for students at a kindergarten level through an 8th grade level. So multi-level content contained within a single course. Not that unlike Alex in that regard, right? The difference between Alex, which is going to automatically curate content for students to work on without us having to do anything as instructors, is for Arrive Math Booster, we do have to come in and pick the content to assign to students. So here you'll see the content is organized by strand. And if I expand the strands, you'll see that each strand gives me each level of content, kindergarten through 8th grade. And then each one of these levels contains a series of modules. And then each one of these modules contains a series of lessons. All total, there's over 1,100 different lessons across all those levels within Arrive Math Booster. So as instructors, we are choosing a specific lesson for students to work on. Until we do that, students don't have any content in their account. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can choose to have students work in Arrive Math Booster. We could assign them specific things to work on within their account, or we could pull them into small groups and work with them hands-on. I would suggest to you that in the Getting Started resources, there is a quick start guide with an e-learning course that will help give you more information about how Arrive Math Booster works. You'll see there's an overview video, walkthrough of the different components that are within the program, as well as assessments and ways that you can implement Arrive in the classroom. And we'll take a look live at what the modules and lessons look like. But I wanted to come here and point out those two different modalities for instruction for students. We could be asking students to interact one-on-one with a digital assignment, or we could be asking students to work with someone providing them instructional support in a hands-on way. So over 1,100 of each of these available to you. And then depending on what your school has set up, you may also have a games kit. The games kit is a series of 50 some odd games that allows students to practice the content that is contained within all these lessons. Now, that was a separate option, not just an automatic inclusion. So you may or may not have that games kit as a part of your Arrive Math Booster setup. Now, outside of all the strand organization that you'll see in your account, there's a program materials section and an interactive tool section. From this program materials section, under planning resources, some teachers will choose to come in here and download the guided support teacher guide from the level that they're working on. The benefit to this is if you just want to quickly see the lessons without having to always come back in to your Arrive Math account, you can do that. So you can see here, it's a full PDF of all of the hands-on lessons that would go along with that particular level. What I really like about the PDF version is the color coding. The text information for you is in black. The things that you would say to students is in blue. And then the questions that are asking for student responses, the student responses will be in red. So I don't want to say anyone could use it, because I'm sure there are some folks who would still struggle, but a wide variety of folks would be able to provide support to students because the description and questioning is so clear in terms of what we're expecting. Right at the top, it lets you know what materials would be needed for that particular lesson. And if any of them say Blackline Masters, they're available to you in your account. So if you're just getting started with Arrive, before you even go in and figure out what you might be assigning, I think it's worthwhile to come in and pull at least the level that you're currently working on, not that you won't use others, so that you have an idea of what's going to be covered in your particular level. And you can see the same link to that quick start guide again. So you could always come back here and download any of these for those levels. Below that, another item that I think is really helpful is the scope of content. So if I come in here and look at this Arrive Math Booster scope of content, I would save this outside of my Arrive account as well. What it does is it shows you for each level, each strand, each module, what the lessons are. So if I was looking to assign something to students digitally, I would probably review this document first so that it was really easy for me to find the content to assign. And you can see it's all here, right, for all the levels. So again, those level numbers are indicative of a grade level. So they're explained a little bit better visually here for each of these guided support guides. Level A would go along with a kindergarten. So the lowest level that's included in Arrive Math Booster, and then level I would go along with 8th grade. So each level represents the next academic year of schooling. But we don't want to call them grade levels, obviously, right? Because we don't want students to know what exactly they're working on. Because we could have a 5th grader who's working at some content in level B as they work on getting caught up. So once you figure out what level, what content you want to assign to students, you could head into your account and actually make that assignment to the students in your class. Let's say that I know that I want to assign something from operations, and I know it's level C, and I know it's contained in the 3-digit subtraction section. So you see how challenging that was if I didn't know what I was looking for in the dropdown, but how easy it would be if I had looked at the PDF first. A little bit backwards as we think of everything just being digital and quick access, but I think it's worth it to look through the PDF and figure out what you're looking for so that you can quickly find it in that dropdown. Now here we are. Here are each of the lessons that are contained in this module. And each one of these will have a series of resources. 2 of them we're very familiar with already. Here's the take another look. There's one student with their device that we could assign to them digitally. And then guided support is the other one we talked about, right? The ability for one adult to work with a couple students hands-on with the content. So these icons will help you remember which is which. The other resources that are included here, the Blackline Masters, there's 2 that are used with the guided support in this particular lesson, so they'll always be right here at point of use. And then there's always a language support resource available for each of the lessons as well, which you might look at to see if it provides some information to help you with the lesson. Now from here, I could print this guided support to use with students and print those Blackline Masters. Or if I wanted them to complete it digitally, I'd be able to come here and just assign this content to my students. So when I click assign, I pick when I want them to see it. I can type in any instructions I want. Here's where the magic happens. I don't have to assign the same thing to all my students, right? If I want to assign something from level B to 10 of my students and something from level A to the other 5, I can choose those students to assign. I can also make groups of students in my class if I'm regularly assigning them the same content to make it easier. So very quick to come in here and make an assignment. I'm going to assign this and go take it right now. So let's make sure this date arranges with today. All right, and I'm going to click assign. So that's it. I know I've assigned it because it pops up right here with the little red date underneath it. And now when my students that I just assigned it to go into their class, they'll be able to work on this Take Another Look lesson. So I'm going to jump now into a student account to show you what I just did. Now I'm just going to pretend to be this student so that we can see this. You do have the option to be able to add your view to a student, right? You could always go in if you want to see what it's going to look like as a student. So here we go. Here's my assignment. Here's my Take Another Look, subtract multiples of 100 that I'd be able to go in and work on. And you can see that this part has 8 components. The first component is a video. So students would be able to watch the video to understand how this is going to work. And then they'll be asked to go through a learn and apply section where they answer questions in a variety of ways to show that they do, in fact, know how to do these problems. When they get to the last component, there is an assessment section. This assessment section is what is going to feed our content, what we see as our data in the teacher account. So you can see all these questions have been pretty similar. So I'm just going to go through and answer these questions. And that's it. I've submitted the assignment. So we intend by the students actually working through all 8 of these parts for it to take them about 15 minutes to complete the lesson. We would also intend for that hands-on in class component to also take about 15 minutes. Of course, I just zoomed through it so that you all could see how students would access it. But students, we would expect about 15 minutes in either direction. All right, I have no new assignments to do because I just completed that. You can see if I come here into past work that I just completed that now. You can see all the other things that I've completed in my account. So pretty simple interface for students to work on. Now I'm going to head back to my teacher account. And I'm going to go back into my Arrive class. You can see now by the way the calendar has shown that this assignment has been given. And if I come into the report section, I'll be able to see what my class has been up to. And I can look by student or by assignment. And notice that first view is activity. So student 18 isn't doing so good right now in terms of their content, right? But I'd be able to just see particular assignments and particular students. I also have a standards performance here. So the standards is going to allow us to take those same questions that the students have already answered and see the breakdown by standards. You can pick your state and the standards or general standards that are in use to really allow you to drill down to where students are experiencing success and where they might still need support. Now, remember the limitation here compared to Alex is that we're responsible for picking what students have access to as opposed to the content being curated for them from an algorithm. We are the algorithm, okay? Again, most of the other things, you won't use that often. Most typically, you will just be in the dashboard for your course, coming through here, picking specific things to assign or print, or maybe viewing the reports that students have completed for content. It's not a whole lot in terms of choices you have to make or things that you have to do within Arrive for students to have access to that content. If you do have the games as one of the resources along with Arrive, in the program material section, we were already here, right? It's where we found our leveled information for the guided teacher support. There is a games kit section that talks about not only a list of games, but the resource guide and the walkthrough of the games kit. So this will help you get familiar with all the different games that are available, which levels of content they align to, and then which game boards and pieces are used within it. And again, a 15-minute window would be considered enough for students to utilize a game with their peers as well. All right, I'm going to pause again and see if folks have any questions or anything else they'd like to see about Arrive Math Booster. And then we will head on to our third program, which is called Redbird Math, for any folks who might have some questions about that. Okay, I don't see any questions for Arrive. If any of them come up, do throw them in and we'll work them in here. But in the interest of everybody's time as your day is wearing on, we are going to move on to Redbird Math. Now, Redbird Math, our third program of today, provides content grades K to 7. It is algorithmically choosing content for students. So the content that students work on in Redbird is automatically assigned to them based on the pathway that they're currently on. To get us started in Redbird today, I'm going to start out as a student and go through what students will experience in the program, since the learning starts with the student, and then we'll take a look at what we would see on the instructor side of things. So I'm going to cheat and just use my instructor account to start out here as a student. And of course, you don't want to do that and do work for your real students in class, right? Because then they won't have to do it. But it's just how I'm demonstrating it to you all today. Oh, I thought I reassigned the course placement to both students, so let's see. Let me try to be Willy Wonka instead of student 18 and see if that resets my pathway. Perfect. All right. So the very first time students log into their Redbird account, they're going to be introduced to Redbird as with a kickoff challenge. This is going to help Redbird figure out where, among grades K to 7, we should consider placing the student. Now, unlike Alex, I don't have any cheat buttons here, so I'm actually going to have to think about whether I want to get these questions right or wrong and type in the answers. This course placement activity will be short for students. It's going to end after students get 2 questions wrong in a row. You can see I just got those first 2 questions right. I'm intentionally going to get this question wrong. Once again, I am going to have a second attempt with this question, and I'm going to choose to get it wrong anyway. Redbird's going to point out what my right answer was. Move me on to the next question. So this is my second question wrong. And that's it. So 2 wrong answers, and I'm going to be done with this course placement activity. So it's much shorter than what you saw when we were looking through the Alex initial knowledge check, because we're not trying to figure out which individual topics to give students credit for. We're merely figuring out where, among grades K to 7, it makes sense to start the student. So much less granular, but the content's also much simpler than the higher grade level content we would see in Alex. At this point, again, no assigning from us. Students are automatically going to get started in the particular unit and lesson that they discovered through that initial assignment. Each one's going to start with a challenge to see if students already know some content. Now, students are able to answer these questions in order to skip the first bit of instruction that comes along with Redbird, but they can also just choose to skip the questions if they want to start out in instruction. This is the only time that the skip button will appear for students. So I always tell them that it's fine to use if they really have no idea what's happening on the screen, similar to the I don't know button in the initial knowledge check. At this point in this instructional component, students are going to work through each of these little circles that you see up here at the top. Regardless of whether they're getting questions right or wrong as they're working, they're going to be able to work through the entire section without getting held up. You can see these little speakers will read each section to students if they would like that as they're working through the program as well. Students will have a variety of ways that they interact with tools. They'll be able to use a variety of buttons to help them understand the answers to the questions if they want to. So you can see here I'm quickly making my way through these circles. Drag the tiles to complete the equation.
19, 9, 5, 15.
All right, so now I'm done with the instruction component and I'm moving on to the demonstrating that I know the content. You can see my dots have switched into a continuous bar here. This is a point where Redbird is going to be able to adapt if a student is still struggling with the content. So if, for example, I get this question wrong, Redbird is going to give me a second attempt to get it correct. But if I continue to get the question wrong, Redbird will give me the correct answer. And will ask me a repeat question with different numbers to see if I figured out the right answer. One more try to be able to do that. And then Redbird's going to say, uh-oh, this student doesn't have enough information, and take me back to another piece of instruction. So these aren't the same questions I saw before. These are new ones. Again, hopefully with the goal of me understanding this content.
nine,
And again, I'll be able to work through this bit of instruction, hopefully showing the right answer. It's really hard to get the questions wrong when you want to get them correct, but I want to show you all what's going to happen. Oops, don't want to do that. That's the right one. Right, so if a student comes back to the content and they are continuing to struggle, even after they got that second bit of instruction, Redbird is going to go ahead and form a precursor lesson for the student. So Redbird's going to back the content up. You can see this exclamation point here, and take students back to previous content. So Redbird will try to provide students support as they need it for the content. And then once they've learned it, take them back to the same spot they were already in. So we'll be able to see this together in the student's account in just a moment. But that's the size of it for most of the time that students spend in their Redbird account. Now, as they make their way through these units, they will come to sections at the end where they'll be able to demonstrate their learning. There's some very awesome learning tools that come up for students where they can build rocket ships and build exercise routines and do all sorts of things that let them demonstrate that they've been able to learn the content. There's also a series of games that you'll see here with this little game icon available to students as they work in program. All right, we are going to leave Willie's account and go back to our class account so that we can go in as a teacher in Redbird and see what your available options are. All right, you can see everything I just did when you first log into your account. This works kind of like a Twitter feed where you can see everything that the student has been doing. So the purple points are just informational. I was doing well. Remember how I was getting all those questions right? Here's my little green thumbs up. And then once I started to struggle, you can see that there's an exclamation point alert. So you would see this for all of your students who are working at the same time. So if you're doing something else while some students are working in Redbird, you could choose to just see the alerts. If you wanted to project it on the board for all students to see as they're working, kind of like a leaderboard, you could just put up the positives. And then students would try to get their name up there for the positive things that are happening. So pretty quick way for you to get a pulse on what students are doing when they're working on their Redbird content. Now that's the student list and newsfeed that automatically loads when I open the account. I also have the option to go into class reports and see what students have been up to in a longer period of time. You'll see a wide variety of reports here at the top. I typically utilize the overview report, which is the first one that loads, and then the progress report. Similar to how we talked about differentiating instruction in class with Alex, the progress report will show you groups of students who have struggled with the same content, so you can provide them support. Our color coding here will quickly show us how students have spent their time amongst all of the different components of Redbird. And then their current location loads a pretty amazing report. It lets us see that everything that students have been up to in their Redbird account. This URL will work for anyone who has it for the whole year, so parents would be able to see this to look through their students' progress. You or parents would be able to come in and replay any of the questions that students have answered, as well as turn the replay off and interact with this question like you are interacting for the first time. So great resources to support students who are struggling with the content. You could use that whole class or with individual students, and it'll keep track of what students do all year. And so again, that was just the current location here in your teacher account, and students have access to that in their account as well. So the interface you saw for students, pretty simple because it's typically younger students who are using it. The goal through all of the standards that are included would be for students to be proficient, ready for algebra by the time they reach their continuation to algebra, right? So if they complete all the content in Redbird, we would think that they were algebra ready for those algebra skills. I don't have a lot of students here in my demo class, but you'd be able to see which categories students fit into between what they're currently working on, what they've struggled with, and what they've been successful with. If you do wish to see that towards standards, you can also have a standards report loaded into your account through their progress. So really any way that you want to be able to see what they've done in Redbird, you would be able to. In terms of support resources for questions you might have about Redbird in your account, there's an educator resources section in the top right corner that will give you information, some general things like an overview, and then some more specific things around instructional models, the STEM projects that are in here, reading reports, materials you can share with families, any resources that you're looking for are available to you directly in your account. And again, I just clicked on educator resources in the top right corner to access that. So all in all, we have 3 great different math intervention programs available to you all between Alex and then Redbird and Arrive Math Booster. Are there additional questions that I can answer about Redbird Math for folks who are still hanging around and are using Redbird Math, or anything that might have come up about any of the products in general since you've been here? All right, I don't see any additional questions, so I will wish you all a wonderful start to the school year, and I hope that either this live session or the recording, if you're watching it after the fact, is able to make you a little more confident with your available math tools, and of course, your students more successful in math class. So, Rish, anything else that folks need to know before they leave for today?
I see lots of comments coming in. Thank you for the wonderful session. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, honestly, and your time as well.
Very hard for us all to split up our time as back to school starts. So I'm pleased for all of you to have an opportunity to learn more.
Yes, and I think it's early morning for you, is it?
It is. It's just after 8 o'clock now.
All right. Anyone has any questions? I don't see any coming on my end. Jen, have you seen any?
I haven't seen any. I
All
see
right, I
lots of
think-
thank yous, which is wonderful, but I've been
Which
keeping
is
my eye out. I
wonderful.
don't see any more
I think
questions.
that just wraps up the end of our session then here and our time. Thank you so much for sharing all the knowledge with us and all the participants who joined us for the session. This brings us to the end of our back to school webinar. Today was our last one. You will get the recording by next week, and you also have the certificate of participation. Abdullah says no questions and appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful back to school season, and we wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye.